Before we step into tonight's story, take just a moment, because what you're about to hear isn't just another story. It's a reminder. A reminder that life doesn't end when things fall apart. Sometimes, that's exactly where it begins again. So if you believe in second chances, if you believe that love doesn't always come when we expect it, and if you believe that sometimes the smallest moments can change everything, then go ahead, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Because stories like this, they don't just entertain you, they stay with you. Now, let's begin. The message didn't arrive loudly. There was no dramatic ringtone, no flashing alert demanding attention. Just a soft vibration, barely noticeable. The kind of sound you might miss if the world around you wasn't completely still. But tonight it was. Emily Carter stood alone in her kitchen, the quiet wrapping around her like a familiar blanket. Her phone rested on the smooth marble counter when it trembled once, gently. That was enough. Her hands paused mid-motion, a plate still damp in her grip. Outside, the rain had been falling for hours, steady, relentless, almost hypnotic. The streets of Portland shimmered under the glow of streetlights, turning the city into a blur of gold and silver reflections. Inside, everything was warm, still, predictable, too predictable. Emily slowly placed the plate down, drying her hands on a soft towel as her eyes drifted toward the phone. Something about that vibration felt different. Dinner had been simple, just soup and toasted bread. It always was. Emily preferred it that way. Simple meals, quiet nights, predictable routines. Because over the years, life had taught her something important. When things are simple, they don't fall apart. When things are quiet, they don't hurt as much. And Emily had learned to live by that. For nearly 15 years, this house had been her entire world. Every corner held a memory. Every shelf carried pieces of a life she had carefully rebuilt after everything she had lost. Her days rarely changed. She worked long hours at the bookstore, surrounded by stories that belonged to other people. Stories filled with adventure, love, heartbreak, second chances. Stories that weren't hers. Then she would come home, cook something small, clean the kitchen, sit quietly with a book, and slowly drift into another night. Day after day, week after week, year after year. Safe, steady, controlled. And for a long time, she convinced herself that it was enough. But deep down, in the quiet spaces between moments, there was something missing. Something she never allowed herself to name. Then, her phone vibrated again. This time, she didn't ignore it. Her eyes moved quickly to the counter. The screen lit up. One message. From Liam, her son. Emily's breath caught for just a second. Liam didn't text late, not without a reason. And immediately her mind began to spiral. Was he okay? Was he hurt? Did something happen? Was he in trouble? The questions came fast, too fast to control. She reached for the phone, her fingers slightly tense as she unlocked it. The message was short, but it didn't feel small. "Mum, I want to tell you something tonight. Please don't be surprised." Emily read it once, then again. Then a third time. The words didn't change, but somehow they felt heavier every time she looked at them. This wasn't just a message. It felt like a moment. The kind of moment that changes things. The kind of moment you can't undo. What does that even mean? She whispered softly to herself. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Of course. Is everything okay? She hit send and waited. The typing dots appeared almost instantly, then disappeared. Then nothing. No reply. Emily frowned slightly. That wasn't like Liam. He had always been steady, thoughtful, careful, especially after everything they had been through together. She slowly placed the phone back down on the counter, but her eyes kept drifting back to it. Every few seconds, waiting, watching, listening. Outside, the rain grew heavier, each drop hitting the window louder than before. Tick, 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 almost like the world itself was counting down to something. 4 years ago, everything had changed. When her husband passed away, the silence in this house became unbearable. But somehow, Emily and Liam learned to carry it together. Late-night conversations that didn't always make sense. Silent dinners where words weren't needed. Moments where grief sat between them, but never pulled them apart. They became everything to each other. And Emily did what mothers do. She gave everything. Her time, her energy, her dreams. She worked longer hours, skipped vacations, ignored the quiet voice inside her that once wanted more from life. And she never complained. Not once. Because to her, Liam was worth everything. But tonight, something felt different. Not fear exactly, but something close to it. Something unfamiliar. Something uncertain. Emily exhaled slowly and reached for the kettle. Because if there was one thing she had learned over the years, it was this. Tea helps when thoughts become too loud. Minutes later, steam curled softly into the air. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat ground her. Then she walked to the small table by the window and sat down. Outside, rain traced slow patterns across the glass. Inside, time felt heavier, slower. Her mind began to wander. Maybe Liam got a new job. Maybe he was moving away. The thought tightened something deep in her chest. Of course she wanted him to grow. Of course she wanted him to succeed. But the idea of this house becoming even quieter felt heavier than she expected. And then, without warning, her thoughts drifted somewhere she usually avoided, to someone she had tried not to think about. Daniel Harper. He had walked into the bookstore 6 months ago. At first, he was just another customer, or so she thought. But there was something different about him. He didn't rush, didn't scroll through his phone, didn't treat the bookstore like a place to pass through. He lingered, he noticed things, he paid attention. And one afternoon, he walked up to the counter holding a worn-out poetry book and asked something unexpected. "Do you think poetry still matters today?" Emily had smiled politely. "Stories always matter," she replied. That conversation lasted 20 minutes, and after that, he kept coming back, sometimes twice a week, sometimes just to browse, sometimes just to talk to her. They spoke about books, childhood memories, loneliness, and the quiet comfort stories bring to people who feel forgotten. And slowly, without even realizing it, Emily began to look forward to those moments, because Daniel did something rare. He listened, not to respond, not to impress, but to understand. And it had been a long time since anyone truly understood her. Then one evening, after closing time, Daniel hesitated at the door, as if he was deciding something. He turned back, holding a book tightly in his hands, and said, "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" Emily felt it instantly. Hope, fear, possibility, all at once. But fear spoke louder. It always did. So she smiled gently and said, "I think my life is a little too busy these days." Daniel nodded, kind, not understanding. But there was something in his eyes, a small flicker of disappointment, one that stayed with her long after he left. And more than once, she wondered if she had made the wrong choice. Suddenly, her phone rang. Emily flinched. The sound cut through the silence like a sharp crack. Her heart skipped. The screen lit up. Liam. The phone kept ringing. Once, twice, 3 times. Emily stared at the screen for half a second longer than she should have, as if answering it might somehow change what she was about to hear. Then she picked it up. "Liam?" Her voice was calm, but her heart wasn't. On the other end, there was a brief pause. Not silence exactly, more like hesitation. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded different. Not scared, not upset, but careful. On that alone made her grip tighten slightly around the phone. "Are you okay?" she asked quickly. "You texted me and then didn't reply. I was starting to worry." "I know, I'm sorry," Liam said softly. I didn't know how to say it over text." Emily stood up without realizing it, pacing slowly across the kitchen. "Say what, Liam?" Another pause. Longer this time, and then, "I'm outside." Emily froze. "What?" "I'm outside your house." For a second, her mind couldn't catch up with the moment. "You're here? Right now?" "Yeah." Emily didn't wait for another word. She moved quickly toward the front door, her heartbeat suddenly loud in her ears. The house that had felt so still just moments ago now felt alive with urgency. She unlocked the door and pulled it open, and there he was, standing under the porch light, rain falling behind him like a curtain of silver. Liam, her son, safe, real, right in front of her. "Liam," she exhaled, relief washing over her instantly. "You scared me." He gave a small smile. "I know. I didn't mean to." Without thinking, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just stood there, holding on. Because sometimes, that's all you need. But then, Emily pulled back slightly. And that's when she noticed it. Liam wasn't alone. There was someone standing just a few steps behind him, partially hidden in the shadow of the porch light. Her eyes narrowed slightly, trying to make sense of the figure. "Liam," she said quietly. He turned, then looked back at her with a small, almost nervous smile. "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet." Something in his tone made her chest tighten again. Not fear, but anticipation. The unknown. The figure stepped forward, slowly, and as the light touched his face, Emily's breath caught. Her heart skipped, because she knew him. Of course she did. "Daniel?" she whispered. Daniel Harper stood there just as she remembered. Same calm presence, same thoughtful eyes. But tonight, there was something more. Something intentional. Something real. "Hi, Emily," he said gently. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink around her. Her son, and the man she had tried so hard not to think about, standing in the same space, at the same time. How do you two?" She struggled to find the words. Liam let out a small breath, glancing at Daniel before looking back at her. "I think we should come inside," he said softly. Minutes later, they sat in the living room, the rain still falling outside, the same quiet house. But now everything felt different. Emily sat across from them, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug, though the tea had long gone cold. Her eyes moved between Liam and Daniel, waiting, needing answers. Finally, Liam spoke. "I didn't tell you before because I wasn't sure how you'd feel," he began. Emily's voice was steady but soft. "Feel about what?" Liam hesitated, then continued. "A few months ago, I started going to this small community reading group." Emily blinked. "Okay." "And that's where I met Daniel." Her eyes widened slightly. "You... what?" Daniel gave a small, respectful nod. "We didn't realize the connection at first," he added. "Not until your name came up." Emily looked at Liam again. "You knew him? This whole time?" Liam shook his head quickly. "No, Mom, not at first. But once I figured it out, I didn't say anything." "Why?" That question came out sharper than she intended. But it needed to be asked. Liam leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now. "Because I saw something." Emily frowned. "Saw what?" He looked at her, really looked at her. "The way you talked about your job again. The way you mentioned the bookstore. More than usual." Emily's breath slowed. "And then one day," Liam continued, "Daniel mentioned someone." He glanced at Daniel. A woman who loved stories, but never let herself be part of one. Emily felt something shift inside her, something she couldn't quite name. "I knew it was you," Liam said quietly. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Liam spoke again. "Mom, I've watched you for years. Emily's eyes softened slightly. You gave everything. After Dad passed away, her grip tightened on the mug. You made sure I was okay, even when you weren't. Her eyes dropped for a second. I saw you stop living your life. That one sentence landed heavier than anything else. Emily swallowed slowly. Liam? No, let me finish, he said gently. I didn't say anything before because I thought, maybe this is what you needed. He paused. But it's not. Emily looked up at him again. And when I realized there was someone who actually made you smile again, his voice softened even more. I couldn't just stay quiet. Emily turned toward Daniel. Her heart was racing now, but not with fear, with something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Why are you here? She asked him quietly. Daniel met her gaze. Honest, steady. Because I didn't want to walk away, without knowing if I gave up too soon. Her breath caught. And because, he continued, your son reminded me that sometimes fear makes decisions we regret. Emily felt those words deeply, too deeply. For years, she had chosen safety, silence, routine. Not because she didn't want more, but because she was afraid of losing again, afraid of change, afraid of feeling something, only to have it taken away. But sitting here now, with Liam, with Daniel, she realized something. Life hadn't ended 4 years ago. She had just stopped allowing it to continue. Emily stood up slowly. The room felt still again, but not empty, different. She looked at Liam first. Her son, the one who had carried her just as much as she had carried him. Thank you, she said softly. Liam smiled. Then she turned to Daniel. There was a brief moment of silence between them. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just honest. And then, she smiled. Not the polite smile she used at the bookstore, but a real one, the kind that comes from somewhere deeper. About that coffee, she said gently. Daniel's expression shifted, just slightly. Hope. Does that offer still stand? For the first time that night, he smiled fully. It always did. Later that night, after Liam had gone home, after the rain had finally begun to slow, Emily stood by the window again. But this time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful, different. Her phone rested beside her, no longer something to fear, but something that had changed everything. She picked it up, and for a moment just held it, thinking, reflecting, smiling. Because sometimes, life doesn't change with a big moment. Sometimes, it changes with a quiet message, a second chance, or the courage to finally say yes. And maybe, just maybe, the story you think is over is only waiting for you to begin again.